If you tell anyone about what happened in that photo booth, I will never speak to you again." She said it with a smile on her face, a real smile. The kind that made everyone in the room think she was joking. She was not joking. She grabbed the photo strip straight out of my hand, looked me dead in the eyes. And I watched something shift in her face, something cold and final and terrifying. And I understood in that exact second that the best moment of my life was about to be erased by the one person who had created it. Subscribe to this channel, follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this goes. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone out loud. For 3 years, I sat across from the same woman at birthday dinners, holiday parties, late-night diners, and Sunday morning coffee shops. And every single time I told myself the exact same lie. She's just my best friend. I said it so many times that I almost believed it. Almost. My name is Ethan Parker. I was 29 years old when everything I thought I knew about my own life got turned completely upside down at my best friend's wedding, inside a photo booth the size of a coat closet, in the span of about 4 seconds. But before I get to that night, before I get to the flash, the kiss, and the moment that changed everything, I have to go back further. Because the truth is, what happened in that photo booth didn't start at a wedding. It started much earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon in October, in a bakery that smelled like brown butter and vanilla, when a woman with flour on her cheek told me that she didn't need anyone to rescue her. That was the first time I met Claire Bennett. I had walked into her bakery by accident. I was looking for a dry cleaner. I found a glass display case full of croissants instead, and a woman behind the counter who looked at me like I had interrupted something important. "Can I help you?" she said, not unkindly, but directly. I'm actually looking for the dry cleaner on 5th. She pointed left without even looking up. 2 doors down. "But since you're already here, you should try the almond croissant. It's better than whatever you were planning to do this afternoon." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's a bold claim." "I'm a bold person," she said. And then she finally looked up, and her eyes were this particular shade of green that I had never seen on anyone before. And I thought something I immediately told myself to put away. I bought the croissant. It was the best thing I had ever eaten. I came back the next day and the day after that. By the 3rd week, Claire was saving me the last almond croissant before I even walked in the door, and I was staying until closing time just to help her stack chairs and count the till, even though she never once asked me to. "You don't have to do that," she said one night, watching me flip a chair onto a table. "I know," I said. "Then why do you?" I looked at her for a moment. "Because you make good coffee, and I don't have anywhere better to be." She smiled at that. Not a big smile. The small one she saved for things that actually mattered to her. I know this now. Back then I just thought I was lucky. That was 3 years before the wedding. 3 years of Tuesday coffees and Saturday farmers markets and Sunday phone calls that started as 5-minute check-ins, and somehow turned into 2-hour conversations about everything and nothing at all. 3 years of her calling me when her oven broke down at midnight, and me showing up with a toolbox and zero idea how to fix a commercial oven, and both of us ending up on the bakery floor laughing at 2 in the morning. 3 years of her sitting in the back row of my classroom after hours while I graded papers, just because she said she liked the quiet, and I never once questioned it, because the truth was I liked it too. I liked it more than I was willing to admit. 3 years of everyone around us saying the same thing. "You two are basically already together. Just admit it. Ethan, come on, we all see it." And every time I laughed it off. Every time I said it's not like that. Every time I meant it less. But here's the thing about Claire Bennett that you need to understand before any of this makes sense. Claire had been hurt before, not casually hurt. Not the kind of hurt that fades after a few weeks and becomes a story you tell over wine. The kind of hurt that changes the way a person holds themselves. The kind of hurt that makes someone who is naturally warm and open start keeping a careful, calculated distance between herself and anyone who gets too close. His name was Marcus. They had dated for 2 years. He was the kind of man who said all the right things in public and then picked apart everything she did in private. He told her she was too emotional, too intense, that her ambition made her difficult to be around, that her feelings were inconvenient. She never told me most of this directly. I pieced it together over time, a comment here, a silence there. The way she flinched slightly when someone raised their voice. The way she apologized reflexively, automatically, even when she had done absolutely nothing wrong. The first time I saw her do it, apologize for something that wasn't her fault. I said, "Claire, stop. You don't have to do that." She looked at me like I had said something in a foreign language. Do what? Say sorry for existing. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her coffee cup and looked out the window and said, very quietly, "Old habit." I didn't push it, but I didn't forget it either. And I think that was the moment I started loving her. Not the way you love a best friend. The other way. The way that sits in your chest, like something heavy and warm, that you carry around with you everywhere, that colors every conversation and every silence and every ordinary Tuesday, like it means something more than it probably should. I loved her. I just didn't know what to do with that. Because here's my own truth, the one I had been carrying, just as carefully as Claire carried hers. I had spent most of my adult life being the person people appreciated but never truly chose. I was the reliable one, the steady one, the one who showed up. The one who helped you move and fixed your car and listened to your problems and made you laugh on the bad days. And people were grateful for that. Genuinely grateful. But grateful is not the same as chosen. Grateful is not the same as wanted. I had watched people I cared about pass me over, not cruelly, not intentionally. Just as if I were a comfortable piece of furniture that everyone appreciated, but no one thought about in a different room. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, ended our 2-year relationship by telling me, "You're wonderful, Ethan. You really are. But I need someone who makes me feel more alive." She married a man who forgot her birthday 3 years in a row. I still think about that sometimes, and I still don't know what to make of it. So by the time Claire and I had become whatever we were to each other, I had a pretty well-established belief that love was something that happened to other people, and my role was to be the person who cheered from the sidelines while everyone else crossed the finish line. And I was okay with that, or at least I had convinced myself I was okay with it. Until the wedding, until everything changed. Daniel Carter was my oldest friend. We had known each other since middle school, the kind of friendship built on shared lunches and terrible haircuts and surviving high school in the same small town. Daniel was the kind of person who was genuinely good, not just surface-level good but structurally, fundamentally good, in the way that made you want to be better just by being around him. He was marrying Olivia, who was warm and funny, and who had looked at Daniel on their first date like he had personally invented something wonderful. They were getting married at a restored barn outside Nashville, the kind of venue that looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine, all warm lights and white flowers, and the smell of cedar and pine. I had been asked to give a reading at the ceremony. Claire had been asked to make the wedding cake, because of course she had. Of course the two of us were woven into the same event, pulled toward the same centerpiece, standing on the same stage. That was how it always was with us. The week before the wedding, Claire called me in a panic. "The top tier is collapsing." "What?" "The top tier of the wedding cake. I don't know. The dowel is shifting. I think the humidity in the storage unit is..." "I'm coming over, Ethan. You don't know anything about cake." "I know how to fix things that are leaning to the left," I said. "That's basically the same skill set." She laughed. That real laugh, the one that came from somewhere genuine. "Get over here," she said. I spent 3 hours in her kitchen that night helping her stabilize a 5-tier wedding cake with the kind of focused intensity normally reserved for emergency surgery. At some point she handed me a spatula, and I held it like I had never seen one before. And she looked at me with such genuine affection that I had to look away because I was afraid of what my face was doing. "You know," she said, smoothing fondant over the 2nd tier with practiced precision, "you didn't have to come." "I know, but you always do," she said it simply. Matter-of-factly, like she was just noting a weather pattern. "Is that a complaint?" I asked. "No," she said quietly. "It's the opposite of a complaint." We worked in silence for a while after that. And in that silence I felt something shift. Something small but significant. Like a key turning in a lock that had been rusted shut for a long time. But I didn't say anything. Because I was afraid. Because I had spent 3 years being afraid. The morning of the wedding, I picked Claire up at her apartment at 9. She was wearing a blue dress that I had never seen before, and her hair was down, and she was carrying a bag of last-minute cake supplies, and she looked like everything I was terrified to want. "You're staring," she said, climbing into the passenger seat. "Sorry, you look great. You sound surprised." "I'm not surprised." I stopped. "You look great." She gave me a sideways look. "Okay, Ethan, what?" "Nothing." but she was smiling. The ceremony itself was beautiful in that uncomplicated way that weddings are beautiful when two people genuinely belong together. Daniel cried during his vows, which surprised no one, because Daniel had always felt things deeply and never apologized for it. Olivia held his hands and said her words steadily, clearly, like she had known them by heart long before she memorized them. I gave my reading a passage about friendship becoming something larger, about the particular courage it takes to choose someone, not just once but every day. I had written it myself and I hadn't told Daniel that. When I sat back down, Claire leaned over and said, "You wrote that?" It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said. "It was beautiful," she said. And then, very quietly, almost too quietly to hear over the music starting up, it made me think about things. What kind of things? She looked at me for just a second. Things I haven't decided what to do with yet. Then the music got louder, and the moment passed, and everyone started moving toward the reception. But I held on to those words. Things I haven't decided what to do with yet. At the reception, Claire and I were seated at the same table, with 4 other friends, Thomas and Jenna, who were newlyweds themselves, and Marcus and Claire, not her Marcus, a different Marcus, and his wife, Rebecca. The table was easy and warm, full of familiar laughter, and for a while it felt like any other night we'd all spent together. Except it didn't. Because every time I looked at Claire, she was looking somewhere else. And every time she looked at me, I was looking somewhere else. And somehow, we never quite managed to look at each other at the same time, like we were both afraid of what would happen if we did. Olivia stopped by our table during the cocktail hour. She crouched down between our chairs and looked at us both with the expression of a woman who had long since lost patience for nonsense. "Okay," she said. "I need the 2 of you to figure it out tonight." "Figure what out?" Claire said. Olivia gave her a look that could have dissolved concrete. "Claire, we're fine, Olivia. You've been fine for 3 years. I love both of you, but this is my wedding, and I cannot watch you two do the thing you always do for one more evening." "What thing?" I said. "The thing," Olivia said, "where you look at each other like that and then pretend you weren't." She stood up. "Tonight, figure it out." She pointed at each of us. "I'm serious." Then she walked away to greet someone else, and Claire and I sat in absolute silence for about 10 full seconds. "She's dramatic," Claire finally said. "She's not wrong," I said. Claire turned to look at me. This time, we both looked at the same time, and I watched something flicker across her face, something complicated and real and a little frightened. Ethan, Claire, we both stopped. Thomas, sitting across from us, pointed between us with his fork. "Please just kiss already. The tension is giving me a headache." Everyone at the table laughed. Claire and I laughed too. But when the laughter faded, the thing that had been flickering between us didn't go away. It settled. It stayed. Around 8 o'clock, the dancing started in earnest. The floor was full, Daniel and Olivia swaying in the center, surrounded by couples moving in and out of the light. The band was playing something slow and inevitable. The kind of song that turns a room into a memory before it's even over. Claire stood beside me at the edge of the dance floor, both of us holding our drinks, watching everyone else move. "Do you ever think," she said suddenly, "about the choices people make? The specific moment when someone decides this person. This is the one I want to be scared with." I looked at her. "All the time," I said, "because it's terrifying, right? Like love is terrifying. It's not like the movies where it's all soft lighting and perfect timing. It's more like standing at the edge of something really high up and deciding whether to jump." "Have you ever jumped?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "Once," she said. "It didn't end well." I knew she meant Marcus. The real one. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be. It taught me what I didn't want." She paused. "I'm still figuring out what I do want." I almost said it then. I came so close to the edge of it, standing there with the music behind us and the lights overhead, and 3 years of carefully maintained distance between us that was somehow getting smaller by the minute. But then Daniel appeared out of nowhere, grabbed my arm, and said, "Photo booth. Everyone, guest book pictures now." And just like that, the moment dissolved. But as we moved toward the back of the room, Claire reached out and took my hand. Not in a romantic way. In the automatic, instinctive way she sometimes reached for my hand in crowds, the way she had done 100 times before. Except this time she held it differently. This time her fingers tightened around mine. And she didn't let go. Not until we reached the photo booth. Not until the curtain closed around us. And the whole entire world was suddenly just 4 feet wide and 2 people deep, and the first countdown had already started. And I realized that this moment was not going to be like any other moment we had ever shared. 4, 3, 2, 1 flash. The first picture caught us both laughing, slightly unprepared, wearing ridiculous paper, props her with a cardboard crown, me with oversized glasses, and it looked exactly like every photo booth picture we had ever taken together. Except that somewhere between the flash and the silence that followed, something in the air had changed. Claire set down the cardboard crown. She looked at me. And I mean, she really looked at me. Not the quick, practiced look of someone who has memorized a face. Not the comfortable, easy look of someone who has spent 3 years being close to another person. The other kind of look. The kind that takes inventory. The kind that asks a question out loud without making a sound. Ethan, she said. Her voice was different, quieter. Like she had taken everything sharp and protective out of it. Yeah, can I ask you something? Yeah, I said again, because my vocabulary had apparently reduced itself to one word. And I need you to be honest with me. Okay. She took a breath. Do you ever? She stopped. She pressed her lips together. Started again. Do you ever get tired of this? Tired of what? This, she gestured between us, whatever this is. The thing we keep pretending isn't happening. Everything inside me went very still. Claire, because I'm tired, she said. I'm so tired of pretending. And I know that's terrifying to say out loud. And I know things could get weird. And I know we've both got our reasons for keeping things exactly the way they are. But Ethan, she met my eyes. I'm really, really tired. The second countdown began. 4, 3, I looked at her. I'm not tired, I said. I'm 2, I'm scared. 1, flash. The second picture caught her looking at me instead of the camera. And for the first time in 3 years, neither one of us was pretending. She reached out and touched my arm, just lightly, just her fingers against my sleeve. Me too, she said. I'm terrified of what? I asked. Of losing you. She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. If this goes wrong, if we try something, and it doesn't work, I lose you. And I don't know how to be in a world where you're not. She stopped. Where you're not the person I call. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. I do know that, I said. Because even if every other thing goes sideways, even if we somehow manage to completely ruin this, I am not going anywhere. I have never gone anywhere. She looked at me for a long moment. Why, she said. The third countdown started. 5, 4. Because, I said, you saved me the last almond croissant on a Tuesday afternoon before you even knew my last name. And I have been failing to leave ever since. 3. She laughed. That real laugh. The one from somewhere genuine. 2, Ethan, she said. Yeah, tell me to stop. 1, I didn't. I couldn't. Because stopping was the one thing in the world I had never wanted. Before the final flash, Claire leaned forward, and she kissed me. Not like a joke, not like a mistake, not like a moment that would be apologized for in the morning. She kissed me the way you kiss someone, when you have been thinking about it for a very long time and have finally decided that being afraid is not a good enough reason to stay away. The camera flashed, and in that fourth and final picture, 2 people who had spent 3 years standing very carefully on opposite sides of a line finally crossed it. Together. When the photo strip printed and dropped into the slot outside the curtain, neither of us moved to get it right away. We just sat there in the quiet, in the small, warm, impossible space between who we had been and who we were about to become. And I remember thinking, I remember this very clearly, that there was something I needed to tell her. Something I had been carrying for 3 years that deserved to be said out loud. So I said it, Claire. Yeah, I have loved you since the second Tuesday. She looked at me. Not the first. The first Tuesday I thought you were intimidating. She burst out laughing, this full, complete, unguarded laugh that I had heard 1,000 times in 1,000 different places, and had somehow never gotten used to. And then she took my face in her hands and she said, very seriously, very quietly, with those green eyes of hers, looking directly into me, like she could see all the way to the part I had been keeping hidden for 3 years. Ethan Parker, I have been saving you the last croissant for 3 years for a reason. Outside the curtain, I could hear the band playing. I could hear our friends laughing. I could hear the whole warm, reckless, beautiful mess of a wedding still going on without us. But inside that tiny booth, the whole world was exactly 4 feet wide. And it was everything I had ever needed. When we finally stepped back out into the reception, holding the photo strip between us, nobody said anything right away. And then Olivia saw our faces. She looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at her. Olivia held up her glass. Finally, she said simply, and the whole table erupted, and Claire squeezed my hand. And I thought for the first time in my life, in a long time, in maybe ever, I thought that maybe I was not destined to stand at the sideline after all. Maybe I had just been waiting for the right photo booth. The right 4 seconds, the right person who was just as scared as I was. And brave enough to lean in anyway. What I didn't know, yet what neither of us could see from inside that beautiful, strange, impossible night, was how hard the road ahead was actually going to be. Because love doesn't fix the things that are broken inside you. It doesn't erase the old fears or silence the old voices. It just gives you someone to face them with. And the facing that part was just beginning. That night, after the dancing and the toasts and the long walk back to the car under a sky full of stars, Claire and I sat on the hood of my truck in the parking lot while everyone else said their goodbyes. She had the photo strip in her hand. She looked at it for a long time. "Can I keep this?" "It's yours," I said. She folded it carefully and put it in her purse. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. And we sat there like that in the parking lot of a barn outside Nashville, under a sky that neither of us was paying attention to, at the beginning of something we didn't have a name for yet. Just the two of us. Finally done pretending. The next morning, Ethan woke up at 6:43 and stared at the ceiling for 11 minutes before he admitted to himself that he was not going to fall back asleep. He reached for his phone. No messages from Claire. He put the phone down, picked it up again, put it down again. He had dropped her off at her apartment at 1 in the morning. They had sat in his truck outside her building for almost 20 minutes, talking about nothing in particular: the wedding, the band, the way Daniel had cried during the first dance, talking around the enormous thing that had happened between them, circling it carefully, the way you circle something hot. When she finally got out of the truck, she stood on the sidewalk and looked back at him through the open window. "So," she said. He said, we're doing this." "We're doing this," he agreed. She nodded slowly, like she was confirming something to herself. "Okay," she pressed her lips together. "Okay, good night, Ethan." "Good night, Claire." She walked to her door, unlocked it, pushed it open, then turned back one more time. "Ethan." "Yeah, I'm glad I kissed you." And before he could answer, she was inside. He had driven home with both hands on the wheel and the radio off, and a feeling in his chest that he didn't have a precise name for something wide and bright and slightly terrifying, like standing in an open field right before a storm rolls in. Not a bad feeling, just a big one, but now it was morning. Real morning. The kind with ordinary light and ordinary sounds, and the ordinary awareness that something extraordinary had happened, and now it had to exist in the daylight. He called her at 7:15. She picked up on the second ring. "I've been awake since 5, she said without saying hello. "Me too." "I made croissants. You stress bake?" "I stress bake," she confirmed. "Do you want to come over?" "I'm already in my car," he said. "A beat, Ethan. You called me from your driveway." "I called you from my driveway," he admitted. She laughed. And just like that, the enormous, slightly terrifying feeling in his chest loosened its grip just a little. He was at her apartment in 12 minutes. She opened the door wearing an apron that said "World's Okayest Baker," which was a joke gift he had gotten her 2 Christmases ago, and she had flour on her left hand. And she looked at him for exactly 1 second, before she stepped aside to let him in. The kitchen smelled extraordinary. There were 6 croissants cooling on the counter. 6, he said. "I was very stressed," she said. He sat down at her kitchen island. She poured 2 cups of coffee, without asking how he took his, because she had known since the first month black, no sugar, and she pushed one toward him and wrapped both hands around her own mug and looked at him from across the counter. This was their ritual, this exact arrangement. Him on that stool, her on the other side, coffee between them like a small, comfortable river. Except today it felt different. Everything was the same, and everything was different. So Claire said, so Ethan said, "We kissed at a wedding." "We did, in a photo booth." "In a photo booth," he confirmed. She looked down at her coffee. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," he said. "And also really good, both at the same time." She looked up. A pause. "Me too." He reached across the counter and put his hand over hers. She looked at it. Then she turned her hand over and held his back. And for a moment, neither of them said anything. And the morning light came through her kitchen window. And the croissants cooled on the counter. And Ethan Parker thought that this right here, this ordinary, extraordinary moment might be the happiest he had ever been in his life. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and something shifted in her face. Not a lot, just enough for him to notice. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah." She set the phone face down. "Just my sister. I'll call her back." He noticed that she didn't look at him when she said it. He filed it away. They spent the morning together the way they always did, talking easily, eating badly, wandering in and out of topics without any particular destination. But underneath the ease, Ethan felt it. A low-frequency hum of something unresolved. A question that hadn't been asked yet. It surfaced around noon, while she was washing dishes and he was drying. Claire, yeah, what happens now? She didn't answer right away. Just kept washing. Then she turned off the water and stood there with her hands braced on the edge of the sink. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know exactly what this is yet. I just know that last night was real, and I don't want to pretend it wasn't. Neither do I, but I also need. She stopped. I need to go slow. I need to not. I need to make sure that we're not just getting caught up in the wedding and the moment. Claire, his voice was gentle. I've been in love with you for 2.5 years. This is not a moment. She turned around to look at him. Her eyes were very bright. 2.5 years, she repeated. Give or take, you never said anything. Neither did you. She laughed at that, a short, slightly helpless laugh. Fair point. He set down the dish towel. I'm not asking you to have everything figured out right now. I'm just asking if you want to try. She looked at him for a long time. Yes, she said, I want to try. That word try turned out to be the most important and most complicated word either of them would say for months. Because trying, it turned out, was not the same as arriving. The first 2 weeks were easy, intoxicatingly easy. The kind of easy that makes you forget you're supposed to be nervous. They moved between their regular routines with a new, tentative warmth, longer goodnight calls, hands held in public without the old self-consciousness, the specific, particular joy of being able to look at someone in a room full of people and not have to pretend you weren't looking. Daniel texted Ethan 2 days after the wedding, about time. I'm putting it in a frame. Olivia texted Claire, I told you. Pay up. They had apparently had a bet running for over a year. Their friends were insufferably pleased with themselves. But somewhere around week 3, the easy started to develop edges. It was a Wednesday evening. Ethan had come to the bakery after closing time, the way he always did, but now it meant something different, and he was still figuring out what version of himself to be in this new context. He was helping Claire inventory supplies flour, butter, vanilla extract, and she was making notes on her clipboard. And everything was fine. Everything was normal, until he made a joke about expanding to a second location. You've been talking about it for 2 years, he said. You have the capital now. You could do it. She didn't laugh. She put her pen down slowly. I've been talking about it, she said. I haven't decided anything. I know, I just meant. I know what you meant. Her voice was careful, measured. I don't need you to fix my timeline, Ethan. He blinked. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just pushing, she said. You were pushing, and you do that. You have opinions about my business and my schedule and my choices, and usually I don't mind because it comes from a good place. But, she stopped herself. He waited. But what? He asked quietly. She pressed the back of her hand to her forehead. Nothing. I'm just tired, long day. Claire, I'm fine, Ethan. But the way she said fine tight clipped, the word used as a door, rather than an answer, told him she wasn't. And for the first time in 3 years of friendship, the easy familiarity that had always existed between them felt slightly out of reach, like a familiar room rearranged in the dark. He drove home that night, with his hands too tight on the wheel. He thought about calling her. He didn't. She didn't call him either. They went 22 hours without talking, which, for people who had spoken every single day for 3 years, felt like a geological age. When she finally called, it was Thursday evening, and he answered before the first ring finished. I'm sorry, she said. No, let me. Her voice was steadier now, like she'd had time to organize whatever she needed to say. I got scared yesterday. Not of you, of how much I care what you think. Because it's different now. You're not just my best friend anymore, and that means your opinions land differently, and I'm still figuring out how to. She exhaled. How to let someone in, fully in, without turning it into something I have to protect myself from. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I know, he said, and for what it's worth, I should have listened better. I should have asked instead of assumed. Yeah, she said. You should have. I'm sorry, I know. A pause. I'm also sorry. Another longer. Then are we okay? She asked. And underneath the question, underneath the careful, controlled way she asked it, he could hear the thing she was actually asking. The real question. The one that was still living in that bakery kitchen, in the aftermath of Marcus, in the careful distance she kept between herself and anything that could hurt her. Are you going to leave? We're okay, he said. We're going to be okay. She breathed out. Okay, she said. Good. Because I made a new croissant. Brown butter and cardamom. And I need someone to tell me if it's as good as I think it is. He was at the bakery in 15 minutes. The croissant was extraordinary. He told her so 4 times. She pretended not to be pleased with herself. He knew she was, and just like that, the road evened out again. But only for a while. Because 6 weeks after the wedding, the thing Ethan had been quietly, unconsciously dreading, since the night in the photo booth finally showed up. His name was Marcus, the real one, Claire's Marcus. He walked into the bakery on a Friday afternoon. Ethan knew because Claire called him approximately 45 seconds after it happened. Her voice doing something he had never heard it do before. A kind of controlled, deliberate calm that was the audible equivalent of someone holding a very heavy thing very still. He came in, she said. Ethan went completely alert. What? Marcus, he came in just now. He ordered a coffee and a croissant, and then he asked if I had time to talk. Every muscle in Ethan's body tightened. What did you say? I said I was busy. Her voice was still that careful, controlled thing. Which I am, but also I wasn't. Claire, he left his number. Silence, he left his number, Ethan repeated, on a napkin. It's very him. Very dramatic. Ethan's jaw was tight. Okay, where are you right now? In my supply room. Pretending to inventory sugar. I'm coming. You don't have to come. Claire. Okay, she said. Come. He was there in 9 minutes. He walked in through the back entrance she'd given him the code to. 8 months ago. Found her in the supply room. Exactly as described. Surrounded by bags of flour and doing absolutely nothing with them. She looked at him when he walked in. Hey, she said. Hey, he crossed to her. Not grabbing, not dramatic. Just there, right in front of her. Are you okay? She stopped. She put down the bag she was holding. Honestly, I don't know. Tell me what you're feeling. She thought about it. Unsettled, she said finally. Not because I want anything from him. I don't. But just seeing him reminds me of who I was when we were together, and I don't like who that was. Who were you? Smaller, she said. I was smaller. I apologized for things I shouldn't have had to apologize for. I made myself easier to be around by making myself less of myself. She paused. And then I spent 2 years afterward being really careful, never to let that happen again. He understood then in a way that settled into his chest like something finally clicking in place what she had been protecting herself from all this time. Not love, not closeness, but the specific corrosive experience of loving someone who required her to be less. You're not smaller, he said. I know that now, she said. I know it here. She pressed a hand to her chest. But sometimes knowing something here. She touched her head. Takes a while to catch up. He nodded. What do you want to do? He asked. About the number. She reached into her apron pocket and held it up. The napkin. Small and slightly crumpled. Then she walked to the trash can in the corner and dropped it in. She turned around and looked at him. Done, she said. And something in the way she said it, simple, clean. No drama, made him feel like he was watching the last piece of something very old finally fall away. He crossed to her and pulled her in, not as a gesture, not as a performance. Just arms around her, her head against his shoulder. The two of them standing in a supply room that smelled like sugar and vanilla and everything ordinary. Ethan, she said, muffled against his jacket. Yeah. Don't ever make me smaller. Never, he said. I wouldn't know how. She laughed a little at that. Then she stepped back and straightened up and picked up her inventory clipboard like they hadn't navigated something genuinely important. Okay, she said. I have 14 bags of sugar, and I need to figure out if I need more. You definitely need more, he said. How do you know? Because you stress bake every time something happens. And things keep happening. She looked at him. Then she pointed at the clipboard. Count the almond flour. He counted the almond flour. Everything was going to be fine. Except that the Monday after Marcus walked into the bakery, Ethan got a phone call from a name he hadn't thought about in a long time. His own past showed up, the way pasts have a tendency to do quietly, from an unexpected angle, at the exact moment when you've convinced yourself you're finally moving forward. Her name was Sarah, his Sarah, the one who had ended their 2-year relationship by telling him he didn't make her feel alive. She called at 8:47 in the morning, and Ethan made the mistake of picking up out of reflex before he registered who it was. Ethan, her voice was warm, familiar, like no time had passed at all. Sarah. He straightened up from the kitchen counter where he'd been making coffee. Hi, I know this is probably unexpected. Little bit, he said carefully. I'm in Nashville, she said. I moved back 2 months ago. And I know it's been a long time, and things ended the way they ended, but I was hoping we could get coffee. Just to catch up. Ethan turned his coffee mug in his hands. Can I ask why? He said. Because he was older now, and more careful, and had learned the hard way that some questions were worth asking directly. A short pause. Then because I made a mistake, Ethan. Leaving you the way I did. And I've been thinking about it for a while. And I'd like to say some things if you'll let me. He didn't tell Claire about the call right away. Not because he was hiding it, but because he needed to sit with it himself first, to figure out what it meant, and what if anything he was going to do with it. He didn't go to coffee with Sarah. But he didn't tell Claire that either. And the not telling even about something he had decided not to do started sitting between them like a small, quiet weight. Not heavy enough to notice right away, just present. Just there. 2 days later, Claire came to his apartment after her Friday close. She brought leftover pastries, the way she often did, and they ate on his couch, watching something neither of them paid attention to. And around 9:30 she said, out of nowhere, "You've been different this week." He looked at her. Different how? I don't know. Quieter, more inside yourself. She turned to face him fully. Did something happen? He made a decision in that moment. A quick one. The kind that feels small when you make it, and turns out to matter more than you expected. He told her about Sarah, every word of it. The call, the request, the reason he hadn't mentioned it. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet. You didn't go, she said. No. Why? Because I didn't want to. He met her eyes. Because the only person I want to have coffee with is sitting on my couch right now. She looked at him for a long moment. Ethan. Her voice was very even. Yeah, why didn't you just tell me? And there it was. The real question. Not about Sarah, not about the coffee. About the not telling. I didn't want you to worry about something that didn't matter, he said. That's not your call to make, she said quietly. What I worry about is my business. What's your business is telling me things. Especially things like this. You're right, he said. I know I am. She picked up her coffee. And I'm not angry. Ethan. We have to be able to talk about the uncomfortable things. The easy stuff is easy. It's always been easy. But the uncomfortable things are what's going to determine whether this works, he finished. She nodded. Yes, she said, exactly. He took her hand. She let him. I'll tell you the uncomfortable things, he said. All of them. Even the ones that feel stupid to say out loud. Good. She leaned her head back against the couch. Me too. They sat like that for a while. His hand in hers, the television talking to itself in the background, the September evening going dark and quiet outside. And Ethan thought with a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time that loving someone the right way was not the same as loving them easily. That real intimacy was not built on the good moments alone, but on the willingness to stay in the room when things got complicated. To say the uncomfortable thing. To choose the honest answer over the comfortable silence. He thought about how, for years, he had loved Claire from a distance that felt safe, and how that distance had kept him protected and also completely alone. He didn't want to be protected anymore. He wanted to be in the room. October came, then November, and with November came the first dinner with Claire's older sister Rachel. Rachel was 41, lived 40 minutes outside Nashville, and had been one of Claire's closest confidants for her entire adult life. She was smart and direct and fiercely protective of her younger sister, and she had also, as it turned out, had a very strong and very vocal opinion about what Claire and Ethan were doing for the past 3 years. I told her, Rachel said to Ethan, approximately 90 seconds into dinner, pointing her fork at her sister. I told her, I said that man is in love with you. Rachel, Claire said. What he was, he obviously was. We're aware, Claire said. Can we order first? Rachel looked at Ethan. Are you good for her, Rachel? It's a fair question. Ethan met Rachel's eyes. I'm trying to be, he said honestly. Rachel considered that for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. Good answer. The dinner was long and loud, and Rachel asked Ethan approximately 40 personal questions, and at one point demanded to hear the photo booth story from his perspective. And he told it while Claire covered her face with her hands and made sounds of low-grade mortification. But by the end of the night, when Rachel stood up to leave, she hugged Ethan with the full-body sincerity of someone who had made up their mind. You better not break her heart, she said quietly against his shoulder. I'm not planning on it, he said. Nobody ever plans on it, Rachel said. Do it anyway. He drove home that night, thinking about what Rachel had said. Nobody ever plans on it. And there was something in that, something real and slightly frightening about The fact that love did not come with guarantees. That you could mean every word and still get things wrong. That the willingness to try was not the same as the certainty of success. But then he thought about Claire's face across the dinner table, laughing at something Rachel had said, reaching over to steal a piece of bread off his plate without asking, doing the small, automatic, 3 years of habit things that told him, without words, that she was comfortable, that she was home, and he thought, even without guarantees, I choose this. Every time. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, they had the biggest fight of the entire relationship. Not a dramatic, door-slamming fight. The quieter, more devastating kind, the kind where both people are speaking in controlled voices and saying things that cut precisely because they're true. It started because of a comment he made about her hours. She had been working 12-hour days for 3 weeks straight, preparing for a holiday catering contract that was the biggest she had ever taken on. He had not seen her for 6 days, not really seen her, not in any meaningful sense. She had been present and also entirely somewhere else. He said, I just feel like I don't exist to you right now. He knew the moment the words were out that he had said them wrong. She put down the piping bag she was holding. She looked at him. I'm building something, she said. I have been building something for 5 years, and I need you to be able to support that, even when it's inconvenient. I do support it. Saying you support it, and acting like my ambition is a problem, are two different things, Ethan. I didn't say it was a problem. You said you feel like you don't exist to me. Do you understand what that sounds like? Do you understand what someone saying that does to a person who was told, over and over, that she was too much, too ambitious, too difficult? Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Because it sounds like Marcus. And I cannot, she stopped. I need you to not sound like Marcus. The room got very still. Ethan felt the weight of what she'd just said settle over him. Claire, he said. I am not Marcus, I know that, she said. In my head I know that. But when you say things like, I know, he took a breath. You're right, I said it wrong. I don't want you to be less ambitious. I don't want you to work fewer hours. I just miss you, and I said it in the worst possible way. She was quiet. I miss you too, she said finally. I'm sorry I've been unavailable. I'm sorry I made it about me. She wiped her hands on her apron, looked at him. We're going to argue, she said. That's just, we're two real people, not a movie. I know, but I need you to be careful about how you say things. I will be, he said. And I need you to tell me when something I'm saying sounds wrong. Instead of letting it, she nodded. Okay, I can do that. He crossed the kitchen to her. She leaned against him. Not fixed, not resolved, but together in it. That was the difference. He was beginning to understand. Not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of both people in the difficulty. Side by side. Not performing closeness, but actually practicing it. Clumsily, imperfectly, day after day. The holiday catering contract was a massive success. Claire stood in her bakery after the last delivery went out, flour on her arms and exhaustion all over her face, and called Ethan, and said, It worked. Of course it worked, he said. It was a lot, she said. It was a really big bet. You make good bets, he said. She laughed, that real laugh. Come over, she said. I have leftover croissants. How many? 11. I stress baked during final prep. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he said. And he was. And they sat on her kitchen floor because they were both too tired to make it to the actual furniture. And they ate cold croissants and talked about nothing important. And at some point, she fell asleep against his shoulder, and he sat very carefully still, so he wouldn't wake her. And Ethan Parker thought, in that moment, with the kitchen lights on, and the city quiet outside, and the woman he loved asleep against his shoulder, I have been afraid my whole life of not being chosen, of being the person people appreciate but leave behind. But she called me. After the biggest success of her year, she called me. Not because she needed to be rescued. Not because she needed someone to fix something. Just because she wanted me in the room. Just because I was the person she wanted beside her. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, that old, familiar fear of not being enough quietly, gently, let him go. Part 2. The morning after Richard Wallace walked out of Carter's table for the second time, Michael woke up at 4:30 in the morning and stared at the ceiling for an hour before he gave up on sleep entirely. He had done the right thing, he knew that. He had stood in his own restaurant and kept his voice calm and pointed Richard Wallace back toward Emily when every instinct in his body was screaming at him to do the opposite. And Emily had thanked him. She had looked at him with something in her eyes that he was still turning over in his mind like a coin he couldn't quite read. But the problem was that Richard Wallace had not gone away. He had gone away from the restaurant. That was different. Darnell figured it out first. Darnell had been with Michael for 6 years, and he had a particular gift for reading the temperature of a room before anyone else knew the temperature had changed. On a Tuesday morning, 3 days after the second meeting, Darnell came into the back office and closed the door behind him, which he never did unless it was serious. "You need to hear something," Darnell said. Michael looked up from the schedule he was reviewing. "Wallace has been making calls," Darnell said. "My cousin works at the county health office, not the one Emily's connected to, the satellite branch over on Piner Road. He said Wallace called over there yesterday and was asking questions about Emily's credentials, her licensing, whether there had been any complaints filed." Michael set down his pen very carefully and he said, "Nothing," Darnell said. "There's nothing to find because there's nothing there. Emily is clean as they come. But that's not the point, is it? The point is he's looking." "No," Michael said. "The point is he's looking while smiling to her face." Darnell nodded once and left the office. Michael sat for 3 minutes without moving. He was doing the thing Emily had been teaching him to do, which was to feel the anger and not immediately act from inside it. He could feel it sitting in his chest like a stone that was getting hotter by the second. He could feel his hands wanting to reach for his phone and dial Wallace directly. He could feel his body wanting to be in motion, wanting to be solving, wanting to be the version of himself that fixed things by putting himself in the way of whatever was threatening. He picked up his phone, he put it down, he picked it up again. He called Emily. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, I'm between appointments. What's going on?" He told her what Darnell had told him. He kept his voice level. He gave her the information without packaging it in his own reaction, which was harder for a man who had spent his whole life leading with his reaction. There was a silence on her end. Then she said, "Okay. Just okay," Michael said. "Emily, he's going behind your back and trying to dig up dirt on you." "I heard you," she said, and I said okay, not because I'm fine with it, because I needed a second to think. And okay is what comes out of my mouth when I'm thinking. Another pause. "I'm going to call my supervising director and give her a heads up. If Wallace calls that office, I want her to already know it's coming and why." "That's it," Michael said. "That's the first step," Emily said. "What would you like me to do differently?" He opened his mouth. He closed it. "I want to call him," Michael said. "I know," Emily said. "He's going after your reputation, Emily. He doesn't get to do that without consequences." "No," she said, "he doesn't. But the consequences need to come from the right place and in the right order. If you call him right now, you become the story. He will make you the story. And then my program becomes about drama between two men, instead of about the families it's trying to serve." Michael pressed his fingers against the bridge of his nose. She was right. He knew she was right. That was the specific kind of anger that comes from knowing someone is right when every cell in your body is arguing for the opposite. "What do you need me to do?" he said. "Right now," she said. "Nothing. Just stay available. I might need your dining room for an extra meeting this week. Can you check the schedule?" He checked the schedule. He gave her 2 options. She picked one. They hung up. He sat in the office for another 5 minutes. Then he went out into the kitchen and started prepping the lunch mise en place with Marcus, because physical work was the only thing that kept his hands from doing something his brain would regret. Marcus didn't ask questions. He just handed Michael a knife and slid a cutting board over, and the two of them worked side by side for 40 minutes in a quiet that felt, for the first time, like the right kind of quiet. Not the frightened quiet Michael had produced on that Thursday night with the phone call. Something different. Something that had a little room in it. The extra meeting happened on Thursday evening. Emily brought in a woman named Dr. Patricia Osei, who was the regional director of the health consortium that oversaw Emily's program. Dr. Osei was in her mid-50s, compact and precise, with a way of speaking that left no unnecessary words on the table. She shook Michael's hand at the door and said, "Thank you for the space," and walked in and sat down. Emily and Dr. Osei sat at a corner table for 90 minutes. Michael stayed at the bar, close enough to be available, far enough not to overhear. When it was over, Dr. Osei stood and shook Michael's hand again on the way out and said, "You've got a good one there." He wasn't sure if she meant Emily or the restaurant. He chose to believe she meant Emily. After Dr. Osei left, Emily sat back down at the table and exhaled slowly. Michael brought 2 glasses of water and sat across from her. Well, he said. Wallace contacted 2 offices, Emily said. Not one. Dr. Osei already knew about one of them. She got ahead of it. He came up empty on both. She wrapped both hands around the water glass. He's going to try something else. What makes you sure? She looked at him steadily. Because men like that don't stop. When they don't find what they're looking for, they escalate. They find a different angle. She paused. He's going to try to come through you next. Michael felt something go very still in him. Through me, he said. He knows the venue is yours, she said. He knows that if you withdraw the space, the program loses its location with 2 weeks to go before the first event. He's going to approach you separately. He's going to make you an offer or a threat, probably something in between, and he's going to do it when I'm not around. Michael looked at her. You're telling me this, so I'll be ready. I'm telling you this, she said, because you're my partner in this, and you deserve to know what's coming. Not so you can fix it, so you can be ready for it. That word, partner. She said it simply, naturally, like it was just the right word for what they were. But it landed in Michael's chest and stayed there. He said he's going to be disappointed. Emily almost smiled. I know, but Michael, when he comes, I need you to hear his whole offer before you respond. Don't cut him off, don't react, just listen to the whole thing. Why? Because if you listen to the whole thing, you'll know exactly what he's trying to do. And then when you decline, you can decline in a way that closes every door he's trying to open. If you cut him off early, he'll find the crack. Michael nodded slowly. He was filing every word away. You're very good at this, he said. I've been underestimated by men like Richard Wallace my entire career, she said. You get good at it, or you get exhausted by it. I chose to get good at it. Richard Wallace called Michael's cell phone on a Friday morning. Michael was in his car outside a supply warehouse, and he almost let it go to voicemail just to make Wallace wait. Then he remembered what Emily said about listening to the whole offer. He answered, Carter, Richard Wallace, I appreciate you taking my call. Sure, Michael said. He leaned back in his seat and kept his voice completely neutral. I'll be direct with you, Wallace said, which in Michael's experience meant he was about to be very indirect. I've enjoyed working with Ms. Dawson. She's passionate, driven. But I think we both know that passion and drive don't always translate to the organizational capacity a program like this needs to actually scale. Michael said nothing. The support I'm offering is real, Wallace continued. The infrastructure, the donor network, the promotional reach. That's not nothing. But the condition has to be a level of professional oversight that ensures the funding is being used effectively. That's not a personal comment on Ms. Dawson. That's just responsible stewardship of charitable resources. Still nothing from Michael. What I'm proposing is simple, Wallace said. I come in as executive director. Ms. Dawson stays on in a program coordinator role. She does what she loves, the hands-on work with families. I handle the structure and the funding relationships. Everybody wins. And your restaurant gets a guaranteed 3-year partnership agreement with a Wawa station, which is worth considerably more than you might think. There it was. Michael let the silence sit for 5 full seconds. Then he said, Are you finished? A brief pause from Wallace. I think I've covered the main points. Yes. Then here's my answer, Michael said. His voice was quiet, not angry, just absolutely clear. Emily Dawson built this program. She designed it. She staffed it. She earned every relationship that makes it work. Your offer to make yourself the director of something she created isn't stewardship. It's a takeover, and my restaurant isn't for sale as part of that deal. He paused once. Don't call this number again about this topic. He hung up. He sat in the parking lot for a moment and breathed. Then he called Emily and told her every word of what had just happened. There was a long pause on her end. Thank you for listening first, she said. You were right, he said. I needed to hear the whole thing. How are you feeling, she said. He thought about it honestly. Like I want to drive to wherever he is and have a different kind of conversation. But you're not going to, she said. No, he said. I'm not going to. Because? She said. Because it would make me the story, he said. And this is your story. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said very softly, Michael. Yeah, you're getting it. He drove back to the restaurant. He did not feel triumphant. He felt something more complicated and more valuable than triumphant. He felt like a man who had done something genuinely hard, something that went against every pattern he had ever built into his muscles over 38 years, and had come out on the other side of it still standing. Still himself, except not exactly the same self as before. The week before the event was when things started to fracture. Wallace had not called back, but the damage he had done before his last phone call had started to reveal itself in ways Michael hadn't anticipated. Two of the three corporate sponsors that Wallace had originally brought to the table quietly withdrew. No explanation given. Just emails that said the foundation was reorganizing its charitable priorities for the quarter. Emily read those emails and didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "We're short. We're short on tables, on printed materials, on the catered breakfast we promised the families." Michael said, "How short?" She showed him the budget gap on her laptop screen. He looked at the number. Then he looked at her. "I'll cover it," he said. She started to shake her head. "Emily, I have the money and I want to put it here. Let me." "This is exactly the thing I was talking about," she said. "You solving things by replacing them with yourself." "This is different," he said. "This isn't me taking over. I'm not going to run the event. I'm not going to stand at the front of the room. I'm not going to put my name anywhere near it. I'm giving you the resource you need to do what you already built." "That's different." She was quiet. "Tell me how it's different," she said. He thought about it. Really thought about it. Because she wasn't asking to challenge him. She was asking because she genuinely wanted to hear his reasoning, and she was going to listen to it. "You designed this," he said. "You know what it needs. You're not asking me to decide what it needs. I'm not inserting my judgment into the design. I'm just filling a hole that someone else dug. I'm not the architect. I'm the concrete." She looked at him for a long moment. "The concrete," she repeated. "I know how that sounds," he said. "No," she said, "it sounds exactly right." She closed her laptop. "Okay, but it goes through the program account. And when people ask who covered the gap, we say community support." "Fine by me," he said. He wrote the check that afternoon. The day before the event was the day everything almost broke apart. It started with the delivery. The company responsible for delivering folding chairs and auxiliary tables to the restaurant sent a notification at 7 in the morning that the order had been canceled. No reason given. When Michael called the company, the dispatcher said the order had been canceled by the account holder. When Michael asked who the account holder was, the dispatcher gave him a name that he didn't immediately recognize. It took him 2 full minutes to place it as a shell business name connected to one of Wallace's subsidiary companies. He stood in the middle of his restaurant with that information sitting in his head like a lit fuse. Wallace had gone into the delivery account somehow, through some connection Michael couldn't immediately trace, and had canceled the order. He had done it remotely, invisibly, and he had timed it for the morning before the event. So there would be barely enough time to fix it. Michael called Emily. Her voice when she answered was already tight. She had seen the notification. "I know," she said. "I'm already calling around." "I have chairs," Michael said. "I have the restaurant chairs. I have the folding chairs from the back storeroom. I have enough. I can drive and pick up whatever else we're short from the rental place on Commerce Street. They know me there. They'll open early for me, Michael." "Emily, let me do this. This is the concrete. This is exactly the concrete." A pause. "Okay," she said. "But I need you to come back in 90 minutes because we have a rehearsal walkthrough with the volunteers, and I need you there." "I'll be back in 75, he said. He was back in 68. He loaded the truck himself. He drove to Commerce Street Rental. He talked them into letting him take 12 additional folding chairs and 4 tables on a same-day walk-in. He drove back. He unloaded everything himself with Marcus helping, the two of them moving fast and quiet and efficient. And the dining room was set up and ready 20 minutes before the volunteers arrived. But during the walkthrough, the thing happened that Michael had not seen coming. They were running through the emergency procedures, the basic safety protocols for the event, which included an alarm test at low volume to make sure the sound system was working. Someone misread the instruction and triggered the full volume alarm instead of the test tone. The sound hit the room like a physical thing. An elderly woman named Mrs. Caldwell, who was the grandmother of one of Emily's volunteers and had come in to help set up, froze completely. She had a hearing aid, and the alarm frequency hit it directly, and she cried out and grabbed the back of a chair, and Michael saw her face go white, and he did what he had done 1,000 times in 1,000 situations. He moved toward the problem, and he raised his voice. "Everyone stay calm. Stay where you are. Marcus, cut the alarm. Darnell, get to the back panel. Everyone else just hold still and don't move." His voice was big and authoritative and completely in control. And Mrs. Caldwell, who was already frightened and disoriented, flinched like she had been struck. She made a sound that Michael would not forget. A small, constricted sound, not quite a cry, the kind of sound a person makes when their body is trying to make itself smaller. The alarm cut off, the room went silent, and in the silence Michael heard it. He heard exactly what he had just done. He had walked into a frightened woman's fear and made himself the loudest thing in it, and his volume, which had come from a real desire to help, had become another source of danger for her. He saw Emily across the room. She was already moving toward Mrs. Caldwell, her voice dropping low and gentle, her hand going to the woman's arm. Mrs. Caldwell turned toward her, like a plant turning toward light. Emily looked at Michael over the woman's shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He stepped back. He felt the full weight of what had just happened settle onto him, not like an accusation but like a truth. Heavy and clear and impossible to argue with. He had been so focused on solving the problem of the alarm that he had walked directly through the person the alarm had frightened. He had treated her panic as an obstacle to be managed, instead of a human experience to be met. He was the thing he was trying to fight, not Richard Wallace. Not the canceled chairs, not the missing sponsors. He was the danger in the room, his certainty, his volume, his absolute conviction that the biggest, fastest, loudest response was the right response. He stood in the middle of the dining room he had built, and he was very quiet for a long moment while Emily sat with Mrs. Caldwell, and the volunteers gave each other uncertain looks, and the afternoon light came through the windows and no one quite knew what to do. Then he walked to where Emily was sitting with Mrs. Caldwell. He crouched down to be at eye level with the older woman. His voice came out at a volume he had to consciously choose, low and careful and unhurried. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, "I'm sorry about the noise. That was a mistake on our end, and I made it worse. Are you all right?" The woman looked at him. Her breathing was steadying. She nodded slowly. "Can I get you some water?" he said. "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you." He got up and went to the kitchen and came back with water, and he set it in front of her and stepped back and let Emily take it from there. He didn't position himself as the person handling the situation. He didn't make himself the solution. He gave what was needed and moved back and let the person who was actually equipped for this moment do her work. Emily glanced at him once. He looked back at her and said nothing. But something had passed between them, in that moment that was larger than either of them had language for right then. He walked to the edge of the room and stood there while the walkthrough continued. And somewhere in the next 20 minutes, between watching Emily work with those volunteers with a patience and a skill that he was only just beginning to understand was its own form of tremendous strength, he felt something shift in him. Not dramatically, not with music or thunder, just a quiet internal movement, like a door that had been stuck for years finally giving on its hinges. He had spent his whole life believing that strength meant being the one who stepped forward, who raised his voice, who made himself the biggest thing in the room so that the room would organize around him and the problem would resolve because there was no other option. He had believed that was love. He had believed that was protection. He had believed that was what it meant to be someone people could count on. But watching Emily, he saw something different. He saw someone who never needed to be the biggest thing in the room, because she was the clearest thing in the room. She didn't manage people. She met them. And because she met them, they trusted her in a way that was deeper and more durable than anything his volume had ever produced. He thought about Marcus and his shaking hands. He thought about every employee who had gone quiet when his voice rose. He thought about Emily's words in the restaurant that night. The woman getting smaller and quieter every year and calling it love. He thought about the frosting and what she had actually been asking him. The walkthrough ended. The volunteers filed out. Emily stayed behind to finish some notes, and Michael moved chairs back into place slowly, methodically, the physical work giving his thoughts somewhere to go. After a while, Emily said, without looking up from her notes, "You did something good today." He said, "I did something bad first." "Yes," she said. "And then you did something good. That's how learning works." He set the last chair in place and came and stood near her table. "Emily," he said, "I need to tell you something." She looked up. "I've been thinking about what you told me. About the relationship. About getting smaller." He stopped and made himself continue. "I think I've done that to people. Not because I wanted to, but because I never thought to ask whether the way I was loving them was the way they needed to be loved. I just assumed that big and loud and certain was the same as safe. And it's not. I know that now. She held his eyes. I know you know it, she said. I'm still learning, he said. I want you to know that I know I'm still learning. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Michael, when I said what I said at the bakery, that request, I wasn't asking you to become someone who has no strength. I was asking you to become someone whose strength doesn't run on automatic. Someone who can feel the impulse and then choose. Not suppress it. Choose. He nodded. Today, she said, when Mrs. Caldwell flinched, you stopped. The old version of you, the version you're describing, that version would have doubled down, would have gotten louder, would have decided her fear was illogical and kept moving. But you stopped, and you got low, and you made your voice small. And then you stepped back. She closed her notebook. That's not weakness. It's everything I was asking for at that bakery. He stood there with that. The whole weight of the year so far pressed against him, and he stood there in the quiet of his restaurant, and let it. Then he said, What do you need tonight, for tomorrow? She stood up and gathered her things. I need you to come tomorrow ready to stand beside me, she said. Not in front, not behind, beside. I can do that, he said. I know, she said, and she walked to the door and stopped and looked back at him. Get some rest, Michael. Tomorrow is going to matter. She left. He sat in the empty restaurant for a long time. The chairs were all in place, the tables were set. Everything was as ready as it could be given. Everything that had happened. He thought about Richard Wallace. Somewhere out there, satisfied with himself, convinced he had broken something. He thought about Mrs. Caldwell flinching. He thought about a frosting dot on a lower lip, and 4 words he hadn't understood yet when she said them. Just always be this gentle. He turned off the lights and locked the door and drove home, and he slept better than he had in weeks. Not because everything was resolved. Because for the first time in a very long time, he felt like he was actually inside his own life, making actual choices, instead of just running the same patterns he had built at 19 years old in his uncle's kitchen. Tomorrow the community was coming. Tomorrow Emily would stand in front of people she had worked for years to serve, and she would lead something she had built from nothing, and none of that had anything to do with Michael Carter, except that he would be beside her. And for the first time in his life, beside was exactly where he wanted to be. December arrived the way December always does in Nashville, fast, loud, and full of obligations that had a way of making everything feel both more meaningful and more exhausting at the same time. 4 months had passed since the wedding. 4 months since the photo booth. 4 months of learning each other in a new language, the same vocabulary, the same faces, the same kitchen island and the same coffee cups, but with entirely new meaning attached to every ordinary thing. Ethan had started keeping track, without meaning to, of all the ways Claire was different from what he had expected. Not disappointing different. Surprising different. The kind of different that made him feel like he had known someone well, and was only now beginning to understand how much more there was. She hummed while she worked. He had known this. What he hadn't known was that she hummed different things depending on her mood. Old country songs when she was content, film scores when she was thinking hard, and nothing at all when something was wrong. The silence was the tell. He learned to pay attention to the silence. She also, he discovered, had a very specific and completely irrational fear of being the last one to know things. If something happened in their friend group, a piece of news, a change, a development, and she found out after everyone else, she went quiet in a particular way that had nothing to do with the news itself and everything to do with an old wound he was still learning the shape of. He found this out on the second Saturday of December, at a holiday dinner at Daniel and Olivia's house, when Olivia announced to the table that she was pregnant. The table erupted. Everyone hugged her. Everyone cried a little. It was genuine, warm, and completely wonderful. Except that Claire's face, for one unguarded second before she composed it, showed something that was not happiness. Not unhappiness either. Something more complicated. Something that looked like being caught off guard, in a way that mattered. Ethan saw it because he had learned to see it. He squeezed her hand under the table. She squeezed back, hard. On the drive home, she was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Olivia told you first, she said. Not a question. He thought about lying, just for a second. She texted me last week, he said. She wanted to tell Daniel's close friends before the dinner. She swore me to secrecy. Claire nodded slowly. Okay. Claire, I said, okay, Ethan, I'm not angry at you. You're something, a pause. She's my best friend, Claire said. She told you before she told me. She told me as Daniel's friend. She told you tonight, as the person who matters most to her. Claire was quiet. That's a very generous reading of the situation, she said. It's also true. Another long. Then I know, she exhaled. I know it's stupid. It's such a small thing. It's not stupid. It feels stupid. Feeling left out isn't stupid, he said. Even when the reason is small. She turned to look at him in the dark of the car. You know, she said 3 years ago, I would have just told myself it was fine and moved on and never mentioned it. What changed? She looked at him for a moment. You did. Then she turned back to the window. In the annoying way where you make it safe to say things. He smiled. I'm keeping that, he said, framing it and putting it on a wall. She laughed, reluctantly, genuinely. The next day she called Olivia. He didn't hear that conversation. But that evening, Claire showed up at his apartment with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 glasses and said, we talked it through. We're fine. She also told me she's been worried for weeks about whether I'd be hurt, that she told you first and she's been agonizing about it. So everyone was in their heads about it. Everyone was in their heads about it, she confirmed. She poured the cider, which is very us, honestly. Very our friend group. Very human, he said. She handed him a glass. Very human. They clinked glasses over nothing and everything. And December kept moving. And life kept accumulating around them, the way it does not in dramatic waves, but in the steady, layered way of real-time passing. It was the week before Christmas, when the first truly serious thing happened. The kind of thing that didn't resolve itself over a phone call or a conversation on a kitchen floor. Ethan's father called. This was notable because his father, Robert Parker, called approximately 3 times a year: Christmas, Ethan's birthday in March, and occasionally a random Tuesday in September when something had reminded him that he had a son in Nashville. Their relationship was not broken, it was just reduced. The product of a divorce when Ethan was 11 and a subsequent geography that had put 3 states between them and a particular kind of emotional distance that nobody had ever quite managed to close. His father was calling to say he was getting remarried. Ethan stood in his kitchen and heard the words and said the right things: congratulations. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you, and meant them well enough, and got off the phone and stood very still for about 90 seconds. Then he called Claire. My dad's getting married, he said when she answered. A short silence. Then how do you feel about that? I'm figuring that out, he said. Do you want to come over? Yeah, I'll make the tea with the honey. The one you like. You know which one I like, Ethan. I've known which one you like for 2.5 years. He was there in 15 minutes. He sat at her kitchen island, and she made the tea the specific one, which was a chamomile with honey and a little orange peel, which she had figured out he liked during a week in his first year of teaching when he'd had a terrible cold. And she'd made him sit still and drink it, and she put it in front of him and sat across from him and waited. He didn't talk right away, he just held the mug. I think, he said finally, that I'm mostly fine with it. He seems happy, she seems good for him. It's just... He stopped. Just what? Claire said. It makes me think about the years when he wasn't there, and how I got used to not needing him, and how getting used to not needing someone is its own kind of loss, because you don't notice it until something reminds you of what was missing. She looked at him across the island. Yeah, she said quietly. I know about that. He looked at her. The thing about me and you, she said slowly, choosing words with care. The reason I made myself not need you, the specific version of not needing you that I did for 3 years, was because you were the person I most wanted to need. And that felt too dangerous. He sat with that. So we were both protecting ourselves, he said. From each other. From ourselves, she corrected. From our own feelings, you were just. She smiled a little, the object in question. He laughed. She laughed. The kitchen was warm. Come to the wedding with me, he said. My dad's wedding, whenever it is. Come with me. She looked at him. Ethan, we've been together 4 months, I know. Meeting your father's new family is a big step, he said. I know it's a big step, I'm asking anyway. She was quiet for a moment. When is it? Spring. He doesn't have a date yet. She looked down at her tea, then back at him. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll come. Something in his chest settled. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, she said. I've never met your father. This could go sideways in 100 directions. Probably, he agreed. I'll prepare a list of exits. Please do. The Christmas holiday passed warm and busy, and full of the specific joy of experiencing familiar things slightly differently. They spent Christmas Eve at Rachel's house outside Nashville, which meant Ethan being interrogated for the second time by a woman who loved Claire and was not particularly interested in being polite about it. Rachel's husband, Tom, was quieter and sat next to Ethan on the back porch after dinner and said, simply, "She talked about you for a long time before any of this happened. Just so you know." Ethan didn't know what to do with that. "Good things," he said. Tom laughed. "Complicated things." Which with Rachel's sister is the same as good things. On Christmas morning, Claire gave Ethan a small wrapped box. Inside was a frame, and in the frame was the photo strip from Daniel and Olivia's wedding. "All 4 frames, I had it printed properly," she said. "The original is still on my refrigerator." He looked at it for a long time. "The 4th one," he said. "My favorite," she said. He put it on his desk at school the following Monday, in the spot where he used to keep a motivational quote he had never actually been motivated by. The students noticed immediately. "Mr. Parker, is that your girlfriend?" "Yes," he said. And it was the first time he said it like that, declarative, simple, without the qualifying hesitation that had always lived in the gap between what he felt and what he was willing to claim. "Yes, my girlfriend." The student looked at the photo strip and back at Ethan. "She looks like she really likes you," the student said. "I know," Ethan said. "I'm still getting used to that." January was when the road got harder again, not in a crisis way. In the slow, grinding, structural way that long-term relationships develop difficulty, not from dramatic external events, but from the accumulated weight of 2 people's real lives pressing against each other. Claire's bakery was growing. The holiday catering contract had led to 3 more inquiries. She was fielding calls from event planners and corporate accounts and a boutique hotel downtown that wanted to discuss an exclusive supply arrangement. It was everything she had worked toward. It was also consuming her completely. Ethan's school had put him on a curriculum redesign committee, which meant 3 additional meetings a week and a stack of administrative work on top of his normal teaching load. He was exhausted in the specific way that teachers get exhausted, not just tired in his body, but depleted at the level of having given everything he had and still being asked for more. They were both running at capacity, and 2 people running at capacity have very little margin left for the delicate, patient work of being in a relationship. It showed up in small ways first. A dinner they had planned, canceled because she had a last-minute consult. A Saturday morning he had looked forward to, redirected when he got called in to cover a sick colleague. The rescheduling. Then the rescheduling of the rescheduling. The way busy stopped feeling temporary and started feeling structural. And then one Tuesday evening in mid-January, 5 months in, Claire said something that stopped Ethan completely mid-sentence. He had been about on stunt one of his seniors, a kid named Marcus, which he had learned to say without flinching, who was struggling with his college essays. And in the middle of his 3rd sentence about it, he noticed that Claire was looking at her phone. He stopped. She didn't notice immediately. "Claire." She looked up. "Sorry. The hotel contract, they sent revisions and I need—" "It's 9 o'clock at night," he said. "I know, I'm sorry." "Keep going." "I don't want to keep going." She put the phone down. "Ethan, I'm not angry," he said, and he wasn't, not exactly. He was something adjacent to sad. I miss you. I keep missing you. We're in the same room and I miss you." She didn't say anything, which was the silence he had learned. The specific one. "What's happening with you?" he asked. "Not the bakery you." She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm scared," she said. "Of what?" She leaned back, pressed her hands flat on the table. "Of wanting this too much. Of building something I can't afford to lose." She looked at him directly. "I've been here before, Ethan. Not with you, but this feeling of depending on something and then having it go wrong. And I've been keeping a little bit of distance. On purpose, without quite realizing I was doing it." He heard her. He really heard her. "How much distance?" he asked quietly. "Enough that if something happened, I might survive it." She said it like it hurt to say. Which is not fair to either of us," he said. "No, it's not. And you've been doing this consciously." "Semi-consciously. The way you do things you know aren't quite right, but you haven't yet figured out how to stop." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Claire, I need you to hear something." "Okay, I am not going to leave. I know you know that in your head. I know you know it here." He touched his temple. "But I need it to get here." He put his hand over his heart. "And the only way that happens is if you let yourself actually be in this. Not a version of this that has an escape route built in. The real thing." Her eyes were bright. "That's terrifying," she said. "I know," he said. "I've been terrified since the 2nd Tuesday. I just stopped letting it run the show." She blinked. One slow blink. Then she picked up her phone and turned it completely over, face down on the table. "Okay," she said. Tell me about your student. He looked at her. The kid with the college essays, she said. Tell me. So he told her, and she listened all the way through. Without the phone, without the distance, with her eyes on his face and her full attention in the room. It was such a small thing. It was everything. February, and the 5-month mark, brought the first real external threat to what they were building, and it came from a direction neither of them had anticipated. It came from a woman named Diane Foster. Diane was the head of the English department at Ethan's school, his colleague, his professional mentor for 3 years, and, as it turned out, someone who had been carrying feelings for Ethan that she had kept entirely to herself until the moment she apparently decided she was done keeping them. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, after a particularly long curriculum meeting, when Diane found Ethan in the hallway and said, with a directness he had always admired and was now finding unexpectedly alarming, "I heard you're seeing someone." "I am," he said. "Seriously?" "Yes," she nodded slowly. Looked at him. "I waited too long, didn't I?" It wasn't a question. "Diane, you don't have to say anything." She smiled, and it was a genuine smile, complicated but real. "I just wanted you to know. For my own, I don't know. Resolution." She straightened up. "She's lucky, whoever she is." "I'm the lucky one," he said. Diane gave him a long look. "Yeah," she said. "I think you believe that." And then she walked away. Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he called Claire, because he had promised to tell her the uncomfortable things. She picked up on the third ring, mid-sentence with someone else, and said, 2 seconds, and then came back. "Sorry. What's up? Something happened today I need to tell you about." A short silence. All of it. The hallway, the conversation, what Diane had said. He didn't soften it or minimize it, he just told it straight. When he finished, Claire was quiet for 3 seconds. "She told you she waited too long," Claire said. "Yes. And you told her you were taken." I did. Another pause. "And you're telling me," she said slowly, "because you promised to tell me the uncomfortable things." "Yes," she exhaled. "Ethan," she said, "I really like you." He blinked. "Okay, I mean I love you. I'm just practicing saying the other thing out loud too." A pause. "I love you." It was the first time either of them had said it. The specific word, plain and direct and unmistakable. He stood in the school parking lot in February with the wind cold against his face and something cracking open in his chest in the best possible way. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you for a long time." "I know," she said. "I'm catching up." "Take your time," he said. "I don't actually want to take my time," she said. "I've been taking my time for 3 years. I'm done taking my time." He laughed. She laughed. The cold wind kept blowing. And Ethan Parker stood in a school parking lot in February and understood, with a bone-deep clarity he had not felt before, that this was it. This was the real thing, not the easy version, not the safe version. The actual thing, the one that cost something, that asked something, that required more than just showing up. The kind of love that made you want to be better at being a person. March arrived, and with it, 2 things happened almost simultaneously. The first was that the boutique hotel offered Claire a contract that was larger than anything she had attempted before. Larger than her current kitchen could support, which meant that the dream she had been carefully tending for 5 years, the second location, the expanded operation, was no longer a future possibility. It was a present necessity. She sat across from Ethan at the kitchen island with the contract printout in her hands and said, "I need to decide by Friday." "What's holding you back?" he asked. "Fear," she said simply. "Just fear, of the scale, of the debt, of what happens if it doesn't work." "It's going to work," he said. "You don't know that." "No, but I know you, and you don't do things halfway." She looked at the contract, back at him. "What if I sign it and it fails?" she said. "Then you figure out what comes next," he said. "But you'll always know you tried." "And if I don't sign it?" He said nothing. She answered her own question. "I'll always wonder." She put the contract down. "I hate that you know exactly what to say." "I really don't," he said. "I just know you." She signed the contract on Thursday. A day early. She called Ethan at the moment her pen left the paper. "Done," she said. "How do you feel?" "Like I might throw up," she said. "But also like I did the right thing." "That's usually how the right thing feels," he said. "Is it always this uncomfortable?" "Every single time," he said. She laughed. And then she said, "I'm glad you're the person I call when I do things like this." "Me too," he said. "I'm really glad I'm that person." The second thing that happened in March was Ethan's father's wedding date was set. April 19th, Knoxville, Tennessee, a small ceremony. 2 hours away. He told Claire on a Sunday morning, sitting on her couch with coffee in both their hands, And she looked at the date on his phone and said, "I'll request the day off from the new kitchen setup." "You don't have to do that. The timing is terrible." "Ethan." She looked at him. "You said you wanted me there." "I did, then I'll be there." She handed back his phone. "Clear your schedule for the drive back. I want to stop somewhere for food." "You want to plan a food stop on the way home from my father's wedding?" "I think after meeting your father and his new wife and being a supportive girlfriend for several hours, I will have earned a good dinner." He laughed so hard he spilled his coffee. She looked at the spill, then at him. "That's the second time this month," she said. "I'll buy you new cushions." "You'll buy me new cushions and a good dinner," she said. "Deal," he said, and he meant it, and she was smiling. And outside the window, March was doing what March does, moving fast, transitioning, making everything feel slightly provisional and slightly new at the same time. In that moment, ordinary as it was, Ethan thought about the night in the photo booth, about the fourth picture, about the moment Claire had said, "That's the one where we chose each other." He was still choosing her, every morning, in the big moments and the spilled coffee and the kitchen floor at midnight and the uncomfortable conversations and the promises kept. He was still choosing her. And what he hadn't understood then, what he was beginning to understand now, was that it wasn't one choice. It was thousands of them, daily, ongoing, renewable. Some easy, some not, some that required everything he had. But all of them, every single one, pointed the same direction. Toward her, toward this, toward whatever they were building together, imperfectly, honestly, in real time. In mid-March, a week before the end of the month, something happened that neither of them saw coming. Ethan was at the new kitchen space. Claire had leased for the expansion a commercial unit 2 blocks from the original bakery. She was overseeing an equipment installation, and he had come by with coffee and absolutely no useful knowledge of commercial kitchen equipment, which was what she always said she wanted, and he always provided. He was standing to the side, out of the way, watching her move through the space with the focused energy she brought to everything she built, when he noticed a man standing near the entrance, mid-40s, well-dressed, watching Claire with an expression that was a specific combination of admiration and something more complicated. Ethan recognized him from a photo Claire had shown him once by accident, during a conversation about her past. Marcus, not a different Marcus, her Marcus. He had come back, and this time he wasn't ordering coffee. He walked directly toward Claire. She saw him at exactly the same moment Ethan started moving forward. She went very still. The kind of still that Ethan had learned meant something was being held under enormous pressure. Marcus stopped 3 feet from her. "Claire," he said. "You look, Marcus." Her voice was flat and clear and entirely controlled. "You need to leave. I just want to talk. 5 minutes." "I said what I had to say on the napkin." "You didn't say anything on the napkin. You threw it away." "That was saying everything," she said. Ethan came to stand beside her, not in front of her, not between them, beside her. Marcus registered presence. His eyes moved between them. This is Ethan," Claire said. "And you're going to leave now." Marcus looked at Ethan for a long moment. Something moved across his face, recognition maybe, or the particular expression of a person who understands they have already lost something, before they even tried to reclaim it. "I made mistakes," Marcus said to Claire, quietly. Like Ethan wasn't there. "I know I did. I'm different now and I just need—" "Marcus." Claire's voice was steady as stone. "I believe you've changed. I genuinely do. But that doesn't mean I'm part of your story anymore. I'm in the middle of a different one." A long silence. Marcus looked at Ethan one more time. Then he nodded. And he left. The door closed behind him. Neither Ethan nor Claire moved for a moment. Then she turned to Ethan. And she did something he hadn't quite expected. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a brittle one. A real one. The full, genuine laugh that came from somewhere deep and certain. "What?" he said. "I said it," she said. "I'm in the middle of a different story. I've never said that before." About anything. She looked at him. "It felt true." "It is true," he said. "I know." She turned back to her kitchen. "Now come here and tell me if this oven is level, because my guy says it is and I think he's wrong." He came and looked at the oven. It was slightly not level. She was right. She was always right about her kitchen. And somewhere between a misaligned commercial oven and the sound of her laugh in an empty space, she was building into something real. Ethan Parker understood that love, actual love, the kind worth having, was not a destination you reached. It was a thing you built, day by day, with someone who chose the work alongside you. And every single day she was still there, still choosing. So was he. April 19th arrived the way important days tend to arrive too fast and with too much weather. Ethan had been awake since 5, not anxious exactly. Something more specific than anxious. The particular alertness of someone who is about to walk into a room full of history and needs to decide before he gets there who he is going to be in it. He picked Claire up at 7:30. She was waiting on her front step with a travel mug in each hand and wearing a dress he had never seen before, simple and dark and exactly right, and she handed him one of the mugs without a word and got in the passenger seat and said, "How are you doing?" "Honestly," he said, "always. I feel like I'm 17, he said. "In the worst possible way." She nodded. "That makes sense." She clicked her seatbelt. "Drive. We have 2 hours, and I want to hear everything you remember about your father before we get there." So he drove and he talked. He told her about Robert Parker in the way you tell someone about a parent you have spent years trying to understand carefully, incompletely, with the particular tenderness you reserve for things that have hurt you without meaning to. He told her about the divorce, about the 3 states of distance, about the birthday cards that came on time for the first 4 years and then started arriving late and then occasionally not at all, about the way his father wasn't a villain, was just absent, and how absent sometimes did more damage than cruel, because at least cruel gave you something to push against. Claire listened. She did not try to fix it or reframe it. She just listened. Around the hour mark, somewhere between Nashville and Knoxville, with the Tennessee hills moving past the windows, she said, "Do you want a relationship with him? Going forward, I mean. Not what you had, what you could have." Ethan thought about it. "I think I want it," he said. Which is probably the honest starting place. "That's more honest than most people get," she said. "Is that enough?" "It's a beginning," she said. "Beginnings are all you ever actually need." They pulled into the venue, a small event space attached to a garden that Robert had apparently chosen because his fiancée, a woman named Patricia, had always wanted something intimate at 9:52. The ceremony was at 11, which gave Ethan exactly 1 hour and 8 minutes to meet his father's new life. Robert Parker was 61, silver-haired, and standing near the entrance when they arrived. He saw Ethan and his face did something complicated, relief and guilt and genuine pleasure all arriving at the same moment, and not quite knowing what order to settle in. "Ethan." He crossed to him, shook his hand, then after a brief hesitation pulled him into a hug. Ethan hugged back. It lasted about 3 seconds longer than their usual hugs. Robert stepped back and looked at Claire. "And you must be." "Claire," she said, extending her hand. "It's really good to meet you." Robert shook it, looked at Ethan. "She's lovely, I know," Ethan said. "Smart, dangerously," Ethan said. Claire gave him a sideways look. "Flattery will get you everywhere." Robert laughed at that. And for a moment, just a moment, Ethan saw his father the way he might have looked before everything got complicated. Before the distance, before the late birthday cards. Just a man who was laughing at something his son's girlfriend had said. Patricia was warm in the way that people are warm when they are genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. She was 60, a retired librarian, and she had the specific quality of someone who had read enough stories to understand that most people were doing their best. She hugged Ethan like she had already decided to like him. She complimented Claire's dress and then immediately asked if she was the pastry chef she'd read about in a Nashville lifestyle piece, which made Claire blink in surprise and then laugh. "You Googled me," Claire said. "I Googled everyone," Patricia said cheerfully. "I'm a librarian. Research is a love language." The ceremony was small. 15 people. Ethan sat in the second row with Claire's hand in his and watched his father marry a woman who made him look like a person at peace and felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness exactly. Forgiveness was a longer project and he knew it. But the beginning of it. The moment when you look at someone who has let you down and see, beneath the disappointment, the actual human being who was always there. After the ceremony, during the small reception, Robert found Ethan standing alone near the window. "Thank you for coming," his father said. "Of course," Ethan said. A beat. Robert turned his glass in his hands. "I know I wasn't. I know there are things I should have done differently. With you, when you were growing up." Ethan said nothing. Waited. "I'm not going to make a speech about it," Robert said. "That's not what today is for. I want you to know that I know. And that Patricia has made me think a lot about the kind of man I want to be. Including the kind of father." Ethan looked at him. "I'd like that," he said carefully. "I'd like to figure out what that looks like. For us." Robert nodded, something eased in his face. So would I, he said. It wasn't a resolution, it was an opening. A small, cautious door. But a door was enough. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet for the first 30 minutes. Claire didn't push. She sat with her feet tucked under her and her head against the window and let the silence do what it needed to do. Then, somewhere south of Cookville, she said, "You doing okay over there?" "Yeah," he said, and meant it. "Actually, yeah. Your dad seems like someone who's trying." "He is," Ethan said. "Late, but late is better than never," she said. "Is it always?" She thought about it. "Mostly," she said. "Depends on what was lost and whether it can be rebuilt." She glanced at him. "Do you think it can, with him?" "I think I want to find out," he said. She nodded. "Good," she said. "That's the right answer." He reached across and took her hand. She held it without looking away from the window. And the Tennessee hills kept moving past. They stopped for dinner. At a place she'd found, a small restaurant in a town neither of them had been to before, and sat across from each other in a corner booth and ordered more food than two people needed and talked for 2 hours about nothing urgent. His students, her new kitchen, a book she was reading, a documentary he'd started and kept forgetting to finish. Ordinary things. The best kind. On the way back to the car, she stopped on the sidewalk and looked at him in the early evening light. "Thank you for asking me to come today," she said. "Thank you for saying yes," he said. She looked at him for a moment. The particular look that he had learned meant she was about to say something she'd been thinking about for a while. "I've been thinking," she said. About the fact that I've been operating like this is still something that might not work. Like I'm still hedging. Keeping one foot out the door just in case." She paused. "And I don't want to do that anymore." He went very still. "What are you saying?" he asked. "I'm saying," she exhaled. "I'm saying I'm in, fully in, both feet." Strategy. She met his eyes. "You said a while back that the only way I was going to believe you'd stay was if I actually let you in. And you were right. So I'm letting you in, completely." He looked at her. Something in his chest that had been slightly braced for months, without him quite realizing it, quietly, completely released. "Claire Bennett," he said. "Ethan Parker," she said. "I am so in love with you," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm starting to really trust that." He took her face in his hands and kissed her on a sidewalk in a town neither of them had a name for, and felt, for one very clear moment, that this was what it felt like to be exactly where you were supposed to be. Then she said, against his shoulder, "Also, the food was incredible." "I'm coming back here," he laughed. "Of course you are," he said. May was the month everything accelerated. The new kitchen was operational by the second week. The hotel contract began. Claire's second location opened for limited production, no retail, just wholesale, and the first week's output was 3 times what she'd projected. She called Ethan after every milestone, sometimes before the milestone, sometimes during. He answered every time. The first delivery to the hotel went, she said, on a Thursday, mid-afternoon, while he was between classes. They ordered double for next week. Claire. "I know, that's incredible, I know." He could hear her trying to contain it. "I'm standing in the middle of my new kitchen, and I'm trying not to cry because I have employees watching me." "Go cry in the supply room," he said. "No one will see." She laughed. I love you. Go be emotional, somewhere private." "Okay. Bye. Congratulations." She hung up. He stood in the hallway of his school with 3 minutes before his next class and smiled at his phone like an idiot. A student walked by. "Mr. Parker?" "Yep," he said, tucking the phone away. "You good?" "Better than good," he said. "Go to class." But May also brought something Ethan hadn't anticipated. Something that arrived quietly at first, and then, as months of accumulated pressure do, all at once. It arrived in the form of a conversation he hadn't planned to have. It was a Saturday evening in mid-May. He and Claire were at his apartment. She was at the kitchen table, with her laptop, reviewing contracts, and he was on the couch, supposedly grading papers, but actually reading the same paragraph for the 4th time. The comfortable version of parallel solitude that had become one of his favorite things about their life together. She spoke without looking up from her screen. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Yeah, and I need you to answer honestly." He put down his papers. "Okay." She closed the laptop. Turned to face him. "Where do you see us in a year?" she said. He looked at her. "I see us here," he said, "together. Figuring it out. That's not specific, I know." He set the papers aside. "What's prompting this?" She pressed her lips together. Rachel said something. He waited. She said. Claire stopped. Started again. "She said that the reason my last relationship failed was because we were always in a holding pattern. That we kept saying eventually and someday and never made anything concrete. And that concrete is how people know they're real to each other. Ethan was quiet. What did you say? He asked. I said she was probably right. The word concrete sat between them. He thought about it carefully. About what he actually wanted. Not felt safe to want. Not the hedged, careful, half-open version. What he actually genuinely wanted. I want to live with you, he said. She blinked. Not right now if you're not ready. Not this month. But that's what I want. I want to come home to you. I want the mornings and the late nights and the grocery runs and all the ordinary things. He looked at her steadily. I'm not in a holding pattern, Claire. I'm building towards something. With you, specifically with you. She was quiet for a long moment. I want that too, she said. I've been wanting it for a while. I just didn't know how to say it without it sounding like too much. Yes. He crossed to the kitchen table and sat across from her. It's not too much, he said. It's the right amount. She looked at him. End of summer, she said. What? End of summer we look for a place together. She held his gaze. Concrete enough? Concrete enough, he said. She opened her laptop again. He went back to the couch, but neither of them was actually doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were both smiling. It was the first week of June when the thing that almost broke them finally arrived. Ethan would look back on it later and understand that it had been building for a while, not in the relationship, but in him. In the particular private architecture of his own doubt that he had never fully dismantled. The old belief that at some point in some form, the person he loved would realize he wasn't quite enough. It arrived as these things often do, wearing the face of something small. He was at the bakery after closing on a Tuesday. He came around the corner from the supply room and stopped because Claire was on the phone, a call she hadn't mentioned. And she was speaking in a tone he recognized as her professional voice. The one that was warm but calibrated. And she was saying, I know. I've been thinking about it too. It's a real opportunity, and honestly, the timing could work if... And then she saw him, and something shifted in her face, and she said, I have to call you back, and hung up. Ethan looked at her. Who was that? He said. His voice was even. He was proud of how even it was. A business contact, she said. But she set the phone down in a particular way. What opportunity? He said. A pause. She sat down. There's a restaurant group, she said carefully. Based in New York. They've been expanding nationally, and they want boutique bakery partnerships in secondary markets. Nashville is one of them. She paused. They reached out 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. He registered that. You've been talking to them for 6 weeks, he said. Preliminary conversations, exploratory. I didn't want to say anything until I knew if it was real. Is it real? She met his eyes. It's very real, she said. They want to meet in person. They've offered to fly me to New York next month. He looked at her. This is a big thing, he said. I know. Why didn't you tell me? She was quiet for a moment. And in that moment, he saw something he recognized, not deception. Something older. The instinct to handle things alone. To not bring someone else into a decision until it was already made, so they couldn't shape it. Because she said slowly, it's my business, and I needed to think about it as my business first. Before it became a conversation. I understand that, he said. I do. But 6 weeks, Claire, I know. That's a long time to be thinking about something that could change our whole plan and not mention it. Her jaw tightened, she said. Or my plan. He stopped. She looked at him steadily. I want to be with you, she said. That is completely true, but my career is mine. The decisions I make about it are mine. And I needed to be sure, before I said anything, that I wasn't going to be influenced. Influenced by me, he said, by anyone. By what I thought you'd want to hear. He sat with that. It stung. Not because she was wrong. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. What are you actually considering? He said. Tell me the real version. She pressed her hands flat on the table. If they offer what I think they're going to offer, she said, it would mean a significant national partnership. My brand, my recipes, their distribution and marketing. I would stay in Nashville. The operation would expand, not relocate. She paused. But it would change everything about the scale and pace of what I'm building. He waited. And yes, she said, it changes some of what we talked about. The timeline. The end of summer plan. It might need to shift. He was quiet. She watched him. Say what you're thinking, she said. I'm thinking, he said carefully, that I'm not upset about the opportunity. I'm upset that you carried it alone for 6 weeks because you were worried about my reaction. He met her eyes. That's the part that tells me we haven't quite fixed the thing that needed fixing. She absorbed that. You're right, she said. I know I am. I hate when you do that. No, I'm right? Say it like that. But the corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile, just the beginning of the tension breaking. Claire, he said, I want you to go to New York. I want you to hear what they have to say. And I want you to make whatever decision is right for your business. All of those things are true. She looked at him. She said, but I need to be someone you talk to, not someone you protect your decisions from. He held her gaze. There's a difference between making your own choices and making them in isolation. I'm not trying to control what you decide. I just want to be in the room when you're thinking about it. A long silence. I hear you, she said. Is that a real I hear you or I hear you and I'm thinking about it one? She stopped, laughed despite herself. It's a real one. I hear you. She reached across the table. I'm sorry. You deserve to know. He took her hand. Tell me more about the New York meeting, he said. She looked at him. You really want to hear it? I really want to hear it. So she told him everything. The restaurant group, the scope of the partnership, the numbers they'd discussed, the concerns she had, the parts that excited her. All of it. The version she'd been carrying alone for 6 weeks, finally out in the open between them. He asked questions, good ones, she answered. And somewhere in that kitchen, at that table, in the honest back and forth of two people, talking about something real, they repaired something. Not by avoiding the difficulty, by going directly through it. Claire flew to New York on a Thursday in late June. She called Ethan from the lobby of her hotel at 11 the night before the meeting. Two wound up to sleep. Tell me something boring, she said. What? I need to calm down. Tell me something boring and school-related. He thought about it. We're switching textbook editions next year, he said. The committee meeting about it was 45 minutes of people arguing about font size. She exhaled, started laughing. Keep going. The vending machine in the teacher's lounge has been broken for 3 weeks, and nobody will call the repair number because everyone's waiting for someone else to do it. She laughed harder. More, she said, Mrs. Holloway brought homemade scones to the last staff meeting and they were extremely dense, and everyone ate them anyway, and told her they were wonderful, and the whole thing was a masterpiece of collective social kindness. She was fully laughing now. Okay, she said. Okay, I can sleep. Yeah, a pause, Ethan. Yeah, thank you for being the person I call. Thank you for calling, he said. The meeting went for 4 hours. She called him at 3:15 Nashville time, from a coffee shop, 2 blocks from the restaurant group's office, and said they want to sign by August. And I told them I needed 30 days to review. That's smart, I know. She paused. I also told them that if we moved forward, I had a non-negotiable about maintaining full creative control over every product that carries my name. What did they say? They said yes, he breathed out. Claire. I know, her voice was bright and shaking slightly at the edges. I know, I'm sitting in this coffee shop by myself and I have no one to hug. I'll hug you when you get home. Promise? Absolutely promise. She laughed. The real laugh. He sat at his kitchen table in Nashville and listened to it and thought, this is as it's like when someone is becoming what they were always supposed to be. She came home on Saturday. He was at her apartment when her cab pulled up. He had let himself in with the key she'd given him in April. He had made the tea, the specific one, chamomile honey orange peel. She walked in and stopped, looked at the mug, looked at him. You made the tea, she said. I made the tea, he said. She dropped her bag and crossed the room and hugged him, the way she said she needed to in that New York coffee shop, fully, completely, without the careful reserve that used to live at the edges of everything between them. He held her. She pressed her face against his shoulder. I really love you, she said, muffled direct. I really love you, he said back. They stood there for a while. Then she pulled back and picked up the mug and said, tell me what I missed. The vending machine is still broken, he said. Obviously, she said. Give me the full update. And they sat on her couch, her feet tucked under her, and the tea warming her hands. And he gave her the full update, every mundane, beloved, utterly ordinary detail of the 4 days she'd been gone. And the night outside went quiet around them. And nothing dramatic happened. And it was the best evening he could remember in a very long time. Because that was the thing about loving someone the right way. The real daily, imperfect, entirely ordinary way. The dramatic moments got you to the beginning. But the ordinary ones were where you actually lived. And Ethan Parker had spent enough years standing at the edge of his own life. He was in it now. Both feet, no exit strategy. Just like she had said, the end of summer was approaching. And with it, every concrete thing they had promised each other. He was ready. He didn't know yet what the next few months would bring, the complications that were still Coming. The joy that was still coming. The moment he had been quietly, unknowingly, moving towards since a Tuesday afternoon in October 3 years ago, when a woman with flour on her cheek told him he should try the almond croissant. He didn't know yet, but he was not afraid. The apartment search started on a Saturday in late July, which was exactly as chaotic as two people with strong opinions and incompatible schedules could make it. They had given themselves 6 weeks. Claire had a running list on her phone organized by neighborhood, range, and proximity to both the original bakery and the new production kitchen. Ethan had a list in his head that was considerably less organized, but with non-negotiables, enough wall space for bookshelves and a kitchen that didn't make Claire look at it the way she looked at things that disappointed her professionally. The first apartment was eliminated in 4 minutes. The kitchen is decorative, Claire said, standing in the middle of it, with the expression of someone who has just been personally insulted. It has a stove, Ethan said. It has the suggestion of a stove, she said. I bake for a living. I cannot live in an apartment where the oven is a prop. The second apartment lasted longer, 12 minutes before Claire discovered that the walls between units were thin enough to hear the neighbors' full conversation. And the neighbors were, at that precise moment, arguing about something with tremendous conviction. No, Claire said. No, Ethan agreed. The third apartment was in a building that smelled like something neither of them could identify, and both of them immediately wanted to leave. They stood on the sidewalk outside it afterward and looked at each other. This is going well, Claire said. Incredibly well, Ethan said. She took out her phone, scrolled. There's one more today. 12-minute drive, 3rd floor. The kitchen photos looked real. Real kitchen is the bar we're working with now? Real kitchen is the bar we're working with now, she confirmed. The fourth apartment had a real kitchen. It also had large windows, a second bedroom that could be an office, and a building manager named Gerald who shook both their hands and told them the neighbors on their floor were a retired music teacher, and a couple who both worked nights and were therefore extremely quiet during the day. Claire walked into the kitchen and was silent for 30 seconds. Then she opened every cabinet. Then she turned on the oven. It preheats evenly, Gerald offered. Claire turned around and looked at Ethan. He had been watching her face. Yeah, he said. Yeah, she said. They signed the lease on a Thursday. Rachel called that evening. You're moving in together, she said to Claire. Not a question. We're moving in together, Claire confirmed. I need you to put Ethan on the phone. Rachel put him on the phone, Claire. Claire handed Ethan the phone with an expression that communicated both apology and amusement in equal measure. He took it. Hey Rachel, Ethan Parker, Rachel said. My sister is the most important person in my life. You understand that? I do, he said. She has worked incredibly hard to become someone who trusts people again. And I am trusting you with that. I know, he said. I don't take it lightly. A pause. Good, Rachel said. Also, I need you to know that if you ever let her carry a heavy box by herself, because you were busy doing something less important, I will consider that a personal offense. He laughed. He couldn't help it. Noted, he said. Put my sister back on. He handed the phone back to Claire, who took it, walked into the other room, and spent 15 minutes alternating between laughing and saying Rachel, stop in the tone of someone who did not actually want her to stop. Moving day was the second Saturday of August, which meant it fell in the worst heat of Nashville, summer, which was the kind of heat that turned ordinary tasks into endurance events. Daniel and Thomas both showed up to help, as did Jenna, who claimed she had a bad back, but proved remarkably capable of directing everyone else's efforts with a clipboard she had brought for reasons no one questioned. Claire arrived at Ethan's apartment, first thing in the morning to help pack, and he opened the door and she walked in and immediately started assessing the state of his boxes with the focused expression she brought to things she cared about. These aren't labeled, she said. They're labeled. They say stuff, she said. 3 of them say stuff. That's a label. She looked at him. I'm going to make you relabel every box, she said. I know you are, he said, and you're okay with that. I have been okay with you reorganizing my life since the second Tuesday, he said. This is just the official version. She stared at him for a second. Then she picked up a marker. Give me the boxes, she said. By noon, everything Ethan owned was loaded. By 2, everything from Claire's apartment was at the new place, stacked in rooms that were temporarily unfamiliar and would shortly become home. By 4, Daniel and Thomas had been fed pizza and released into the wild. Jenna had departed with her clipboard and a satisfied expression, and Ethan and Claire were alone in their new apartment for the first time. It was loud with boxes. It smelled like moving that particular combination of cardboard and dust and possibility. Claire sat down on the floor in the middle of the living room because the couch hadn't been placed yet, and Ethan sat down across from her, and they looked at each other across a field of boxes and half-assembled furniture. "We live here now," she said. "We live here now," he said. She looked around, back at him. "I'm not scared," she said, like she had expected to be, and was reporting the surprising absence of it. "No," he said. "No," she sounded genuinely curious about it. "I thought I would be. I've been waiting to feel scared for 3 weeks. And right now, sitting in a room full of boxes with you, I just feel," she paused, searching for the word. "Right. I feel right." He reached across the boxes between them and held out his hand. She took it. They sat like that on the floor of their new apartment, until the evening light came through the windows, and the city outside got quieter, and nobody needed to say anything else, because everything important had already been said. The first month of living together was an education in the specific, intimate knowledge of another person that proximity makes possible. He learned that she woke up 20 minutes before her alarm every morning and lay still trying to decide if she could justify going back to sleep, which she never could. She learned that he made coffee in absolute silence and did not speak actual sentences until the second cup, a quirk she adapted to with the pragmatic efficiency of someone who had decided to love a person's complete reality. He learned that she reorganized things when she was stressed, not chaotically, but systematically, as though reordering her physical space was a way of restoring internal order. She learned that he processed difficult things by going very quiet, and that the quiet was not withdrawal, just the sound of him working something through, and that the right response was to be near without pressing. They built a rhythm, slowly, imperfectly, with some friction and a great deal of laughter. They argued about dishes twice, and reached a compromise that satisfied neither of them completely, which Claire said was the sign of a genuinely fair compromise. They had one serious argument about scheduling, about the way his school calendar and her business calendar seemed constitutionally incapable of aligning, and got through it by making a shared calendar on his phone and her phone that they both had access to, which was so practical it was almost anticlimactic. They also, in those first weeks, did something they had not quite had the daily proximity to do before. They became fluent in each other's silences. He could tell, within minutes of her coming home, what kind of day she had. Not by what she said, by where she put her keys, by the speed of her movements, by whether she hummed. She could tell when he had had a hard day with a student, not the kind of hard that was professionally frustrating, but the kind that stayed with him, that he carried home because he cared more than was strictly efficient, by the way he sat down, by the specific way he held his coffee mug when he wasn't drinking from it. They knew each other, and they were still learning each other, and somehow both things were true simultaneously. September arrived, and with it the anniversary. 1 year since Daniel and Olivia's wedding. 1 year since the photo booth. 1 year since the 4th picture. Olivia texted both of them on the morning of the anniversary date. "Happy 1 year, you too. I take full credit." Then a series of emojis that expressed unmistakable self-satisfaction. Daniel texted Ethan separately. "Honestly, man, best thing that happened at my wedding. No offense to me getting married." Ethan sent back, "None taken." He and Claire had not made dramatic plans. That was intentional. They had talked about it and agreed that they didn't want to perform the anniversary. Didn't want to do something expensive or elaborate, just to have something to point to. They wanted to do something true to what they actually were. So they went back to the barn outside Nashville, where Daniel and Olivia had gotten married. The venue did private event rentals on off nights, and Claire had booked a 2-hour slot in the reception hall. Not the whole venue, just the room, just the space. When they walked in, it looked nothing like a wedding. It was empty and plain and lit by a few work lights, and the photo booth was gone, replaced by stacked chairs and folded tables. But the bones of the room were the same, the proportions, the ceiling, the feel. They stood in the middle of the empty room. "We were standing about there," Ethan said, pointing toward where their table had been. "You fixed my crooked tie," Claire said. "Your tie was aggressively crooked." "It was fashionably crooked," she said. "There's a difference." He smiled. She turned slowly, taking in the room. "And the photo booth was back there," he said. They walked to the corner. There was nothing there now except blank wall. But they stood in the approximate space anyway. Claire looked at the wall. Then she looked at him. "I was so scared," she said. I know, me too. I almost didn't kiss you, she said. You know that? He looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, when the third countdown started, I almost talked myself out of it. I was sitting there thinking, this is a terrible idea. This is going to ruin everything. Just take the picture and go back to the table. And pretend this conversation didn't happen. She paused. And then I thought I have been pretending for 3 years. I am so tired of pretending, so you kissed me, he said. So I kissed you, she said. Best decision you ever made, he said. She gave him a look. Top 5, she said. Signing the hotel contract is in there. And the original bakery. And that one time I turned down a terrible apartment that looked good on paper. Where do I rank? She pretended to think about it. Top 3, she said finally. Top 3, he repeated. I'll take it. She laughed. And he thought for the 100th time in a year that had been full of thinking it, that her laugh was still the thing. Still the sound that made whatever room they were in feel like exactly the right place to be. He reached into his jacket pocket. He had put it there that morning, deliberately. The way you do something you have been thinking about for a while and have finally decided is the right time. He held it out. It was the photo strip, the original one. The one she had kept on her refrigerator for a year before it came to live in their apartment, in the frame on the bookshelf. He had taken it out of the frame that morning, while she was in the shower, and brought it with him. She looked at it in his hand. The original, she said. The original, he said. She took it carefully, held it between her fingers. Look at all 4 frames in sequence the way she always did when she held it first to fourth, reading it like a story. Look at us, she said quietly. He looked over her shoulder. 2 people in the first frame, laughing, wearing ridiculous paper props, pretending to be just friends. 2 people in the second frame, the pretending already over, looking at each other instead of the camera. 2 people in the third frame, courage written in every line of their faces, leaning towards something terrifying and real. 2 people in the fourth frame, in the middle of the thing, they had both wanted for longer than either of them had been willing to say. The fourth one, he said. Still my favorite, she said. He moved around to stand in front of her. And she looked up from the photo strip to find him watching her with an expression she recognized, the open, steady, fully present one that she had once thought was just how he looked at everyone and had eventually understood was specifically how he looked at her. He reached into his pocket again. This time he brought out something smaller. Something she hadn't seen him holding. She looked at it. Her breath changed. Ethan, she said, Claire. His voice was completely steady. I want to tell you something that I've been trying to find the right words for, and I've decided that there are no perfect words. So I'm just going to say the real ones. She was very still. You once told me that love was like standing at the edge of something very high up and deciding whether to jump, he said. And you were right. But what I've learned this year is that the jumping is only the first part. The bigger thing, the real thing, is deciding every single day, after you've already jumped, to keep going, to stay in the air, to trust that the other person is jumping with you. Her eyes were bright. I want to keep jumping with you, he said. For the rest of my life, every ordinary Tuesday, every hard conversation, every kitchen floor at midnight, every moment that's nothing like a movie and everything like a real life. He opened the small box in his hand. I love you, Claire Bennett. Will you marry me? She looked at the ring. She looked at him. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob, but something in between, the specific sound of emotion that is too full to fit into any one category. You absolute, she stopped, pressed her fingers to her mouth. You brought me back to the photo booth to propose to me. I did, in an empty room. In the empty room, he said, which is technically where it started. It started in a room full of people. It started here, he said, in this corner, when you told me to stop you and I couldn't. She looked at him for a long moment, then she said yes. Simple. Clean, the word she had been afraid of for years, offered freely without reservation. Yes, she said again, like she wanted to hear it out loud, like she was giving herself the gift of saying it, without the old fear underneath it. He slid the ring onto her finger. She looked at it. Then she looked at him, and she kissed him, not as a joke, not because of the room, not because of the ring, not because of the year they'd had, or the one coming. Because he was Ethan and she was Claire, and the two of them had spent a very long time learning how to choose each other, and they were very, very good at it now. When she pulled back, she was laughing. Rachel is going to be so insufferable about this, she said. Completely insufferable, he agreed. She's going to say she knew. She did know, he said. Tom told me she called it 18 months ago. Claire stared at him. She called it 18 months ago. Apparently, she never said anything. She said she was waiting to see if you'd figure it out yourself. Claire shook her head, looked at the ring, looked at him. Shook her head again. I love her so much even when she's terrible. Call her, he said. She already had her phone out. Rachel answered before the first ring finished, which meant Rachel had been waiting. Claire, we're engaged, Claire said. Absolute silence. Then, oh, I knew it, Tom. Tom, I called it 18 months ago, Tom. They could hear Tom in the background saying something calm and affirming. Claire was laughing so hard she could barely hold the phone. Ethan stood beside her in the empty room, where a year ago everything had changed, listening to his fiancée laugh at her sister's completely accurate prediction, and felt something settle in him that he recognized as the complete and total absence of the old fear, the one that said he was always the backup, always the second choice, always the one who showed up but was never truly chosen. It was gone. It had been replaced by something so ordinary and so solid that it barely had a name. Just the daily weight of being someone's person, the particular irreplaceable feeling of being known. They called Daniel next. He said finally, with such emphasis that it was clearly a word he had been saving. Olivia got on the phone and said, I want to be involved in everything. Every decision. I take credit for this entire relationship. They told her she could have whatever credit she wanted. They called Ethan's father. Robert Parker picked up on the fourth ring, slightly breathless, and listened to the news, and then was quiet for a moment that held everything that had not quite been said yet between them, the distance, the late cards, the slow beginning of something better. Congratulations, son, he said. It was the first time in a long time that word had landed without any complicated weight attached to it. Thank you, Dad, Ethan said. Claire squeezed his hand. On the drive home, she had the photo strip in her hand again. She held it in her lap and looked at it in the passing light from the street outside the windows. You know what I think about? She said. Tell me. The person I was 3 years ago, she said. The one who walked into that wedding, telling herself she was fine. That everything was fine. That she didn't need anything more than what she had. She turned the photo strip over in her fingers. She was so convinced that wanting more was dangerous. And now, he said. She looked at him. And now I think the most dangerous thing I ever almost did was talk myself out of that last flash. He reached across and put his hand over hers. She turned her hand over, held his. Neither of them said anything for a while. The Nashville lights moved past outside. The road was easy and familiar. They went home. Their home. The apartment, with the real kitchen, and the bookshelves, with his books and her cookbooks, mixed together with no particular system. The apartment where the keys always went on the hook by the door, because she had put the hook up the second week, and he had adopted the habit within 3 days. The apartment where the photo strip lived in a frame on the bookshelf, and where a new frame would sit beside it soon. She made tea. He sat at the kitchen island, on the same stool, in the same arrangement that had been theirs for 3 years, him on one side, her on the other, something warm between them. Except everything was different now. And everything was exactly the same. She set his mug in front of him, chamomile honey orange peel. She never had to ask. She wrapped her hands around her own mug. She looked at him across the counter. So she said. So he said. We're getting married. We're getting married, he confirmed. She looked at the ring on her finger, flexed her hand slowly, getting used to the weight of it. Then she looked back up at him with those green eyes, the specific shade he had been unable to name precisely the very first day, and had stopped trying to name because some things were better held than categorized. I'm glad you were lost, she said. He looked at her. What? The dry cleaner, 3 years ago. You were looking for the dry cleaner and you walked into my bakery instead. She tilted her head. I'm glad you were lost. He held her gaze. I was always going to find you, he said. She smiled. Not the small, careful smile she used to give things that mattered. The full one, the unguarded one, the one that had taken him 2 years to earn, and that she now gave freely, every day, like it cost her nothing. Because it didn't anymore. I know, she said. I think I always knew. Outside, Nashville went on being Nashville, loud and bright, and full of people in the middle of their own stories, their own photo booths, their own moments of finally deciding to stop pretending. Inside, 2 people who had spent 3 years standing on opposite sides of a line drank their tea in the kitchen of the home they had built together, wearing the ordinary, irreplaceable weight of a life fully chosen. Not because they had figured everything out, not because the road had been smooth, or the fears had been small, or the conversations had been easy. But because every single time one of them had been afraid, and they had both been afraid, often in the specific and personal way that love requires, they had stayed. They had chosen, and they had been right to. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for love to find them in a grand, unmistakable moment. What Ethan and Claire had learned slowly, imperfectly, across 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays, was something quieter and more durable than that. Love was not the flash of the camera. Love was everything that came after it. The showing up, the staying, the choosing again and again to be in the room. And in the end, that was the whole story. That was the fourth picture. That was enough. That was everything.